The affliction of humanity and the human being is really simple. The human child gets spooked. Boo, right? Spooked. And the first time the human child gets spooked, it notices the feelings of what it's like to be spooked. But on a neurological level, the child thinks that the experience of being spooked is the cause of being spooked. And the child thinks that it needs to do something to unspook itself. And so the child stays stuck in a state of fear and is always trying to fix circumstances to turn off this neurological phenomenon of pervasive fear and anxiety and paranoia. And the child, for the rest of its life, thinks that its own deficiencies are the cause of all of its problems. And in a part, it is true, but the problems aren't real. The human mind is like this story I just made up telling a friend to try to explain what awakening is like. You see, imagine what it would be like to be a baby deer and to wander away from your mother to go looking at the city. And there's a fence there, and it's made out of barbed wire. Now, your mother told you, please don't go over there. You're not big enough yet, and you don't want to go over there. You know, that those people aren't necessarily good for you. And you got a little bigger, and you were just curious. You could hear all the sounds of what's going on in that city, and you don't understand it, and your mother doesn't understand it either. See, your mother tells you, that's a world I don't understand, okay? I understand the forest. I can't help you over there. And so if you go over there, you could get lost, and I'll never find you again. And so the curiosity got to the baby deer, and it went to the fence, and it found that it could squeeze through, and it got through the barbed wire, and it was able to go out there. And it started exploring this new magical world with all these sounds and noises, people that walked different. And everything was okay until the little deer realized it had wandered so far and it doesn't know this world it's in, and it doesn't necessarily know how to get back anymore. And it's getting dark and it's all alone. And then suddenly, the little deer gets noticed by a person. The person looks at the deer, and that person starts to get hungry. And now the person starts to chase the deer. And so the little baby deer is crying for its mother, and it's running and it's running and it's running. And now more people are chasing the little deer, and it's terrified. Well, finally the deer finds that fence, and it's running full speed, and it runs into the fence, and it gets twisted within the barbed wire, but it gets away, and there's no people, and there's the mother. And now the mother's looking at its baby, and its baby is twisted and it's in pain, and the baby is just stricken by this experience. And there's nothing the mother could do, because the mother doesn't understand the barbed wire. The mother doesn't have tools, but it can't understand why its baby's hurting so much. It told it not to go over there, and it went anyway. And there's nothing the mother can do to fix or help the little baby. And so now this baby deer grows up with its little body wrapped in barbed wire. And as it grows, the pain increases and its memories of all the people. And so this little deer lives out its life where it can barely move, where everything hurts, and it's always in fear. And the other deers come up to it, and this deer lashes out in pain because it doesn't understand, because all it knows is pain, and all it knows is it can barely move around, and it doesn't know that all this pain, where it's coming from. All the deer knows is it can barely move, and so it moves around within this small space that it can, and it's vulnerable. And so it's always afraid that it's going to get hurt by the other deers because the pain and the fear doesn't go anywhere, because every single barb is pushing in, constantly causing pain, constantly causing fear and anxiety. And because it's vulnerable and helpless and confused, anytime a deer comes up to it, it doesn't know what the deer wants because it's always in fear anyway. And so it can only presume that these deers will hurt it, just like all the people that chased it and made it run into the barbed wire. But you see, the deer doesn't know what barbed wire is. It doesn't understand that it has barbed wire. It just knows that it can only walk a certain distance. It only knows that it can only move a certain amount, and it only knows pain. And it's been this way its whole life. And then one day a farmer comes across this deer, writhing in pain, wincing and twitching, unable to really run, unable to move. It's angry, and it's defensive, and it's paranoid, and it's stuck. It doesn't know why it's stuck. It doesn't know why it's hurting, but it needs to make sure it doesn't get hurt. And the farmer pulls out a set of snips, and it slowly and meticulously cuts away the barbed wire that's invisible to the deer. And suddenly it gets all the barbed wire off, and all the pain disappears, and all the fear disappears. And suddenly the deer is free, and it can move. And it didn't know why it couldn't move before, and it didn't know why, but now it does. Without the noise, without the pain dominating it, without its fear of everything around it, it can remember. It remembers what happened now. It remembers its mother telling it not to go over there, and it went anyway. And it remembers the people chasing, and it remembers it ran into the barbed wire, and that's what it was, the barbed wire. This whole time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I was so angry. I didn't know why I was so afraid. I didn't know why I couldn't move. I didn't know why I couldn't fulfill my dreams. I didn't know why I couldn't go and do the things that the other deers could do. And this whole time I thought those other deers were coming to hurt me. No. I just had this barbed wire. This whole time, years, I was in this barbed wire, constraining my movement, making me afraid, giving me pain, making my mother look like an enemy when she tried to help me. She tried to help, but she couldn't. And I thought it was her fault because when she would touch me, it would hurt worse. And people would try to help and they would touch me and it would hurt worse. And so I made everyone run away. I lashed out because all the deers would come and they would bring me food and they would tell me about their adventures, and I couldn't do those things and I would be angry. And everyone that tried to help, they just didn't know how to remove the barbed wire. They cared about me, but I couldn't tell because every time they would touch the barbed wire trying to help me, it would push the barbed wire into me and it would hurt worse. And I would lash out and blame them for it. But it wasn't their fault that I had this barbed wire. The barbed wire was there before them. They came across me and they wanted to help, but they couldn't. The only one that could help was the one that could see the barbed wire and had the tools to remove it. We've had people come to remove the barbed wire of your mind, and you've nailed them to a cross for it. Tell me about your barbed wire and let me know if you want it removed.